happens when the home and space that you've occupied and invested in is not viewed as valuable as it should possibly be simply because of the color of your skin? Well, that's how one couple describes their experience when getting an appraisal on their home. And they say that it was undervalued simply because they are black. Joining us now are doctors Nathan Connolly and Shani Mott. Thank you both for being here. So let's just walk through the process here. The two of you were looking to refinance your home to take advantage of the low interest rates. And then what happened?
Well, we experienced discrimination. We made a pretty straightforward application to get our house at a reduced interest rate from 4.65% to 2.25%. And we thought we were in pretty good shape to be able to meet the mark. We had made investments in the house that exceeded, $30,000. We had seen the market on a steady uptick, and we had a baseline amount that was labeled as pretty conservative, both by us and by the loan officer at Loan Depot with whom we worked. And so we were very surprised to learn upon a drive down to Florida we were making as a family that the home did not come in at value.
I mean, it's important to know that when we first started this process, we looked at a range of loan companies. And one of the things that I really appreciated about Loan Depot was just how communicative they were. And I had lots of questions. I was trying to kind of go by the book and collect at least, 4 to 5 estimates and talk with people and see who I vibed with.
So then you go and get a second appraisal after, in effect, whitewashing your house. Give us a sense, first of all, what you did to whitewash your house.
Well, we were aware that there were examples of whitewashing being effective in helping Black families get the value that they were entitled to. And so we had to have a very careful conversation with our children. We knew that we would have to remove evidence of their presence in our home, evidence of our own presence in the home.
Because right from the beginning, it seems that you jumped to the conclusion, our house came in with this low appraisal simply because we're Black.
Well, I don't know if it was that we jumped to that conclusion. I mean, we certainly gave the representative from 2020 Valuations, Mr. Shane Lanham, a chance to do his job. I mean, when we were in the home during the first appraisal, right, we made, light conversation with him. We certainly gave him free run of the place. We had some sense that discrimination was a problem, but we didn't expect that it would happen in this particular case. And so when the number came back at $472,000,
my jaw dropped.
Right.
I was like, this is racism.
Right.
Because we had done the research,
right?
It's aside from researching to try to figure out what the numbers would be for what we could sell our house for, I would ask a neighbor if they were in the process of refinancing, what did their homes come in at? And
right.
So we didn't go into this process, this refinance process blindly. Like we were educated consumers.
We did the whitewashing experiment. And even though we had already given Loan Depot comps that had reflected a value in the mid-6s or even higher, and we had been rejected, we left the whitewashing experiment to kind of be that final bit of evidence that we needed to be made whole.
So what did the experiment bear out?
Well, we had a white colleague meet the new appraiser at the door. They apparently had some light conversation and shared some anecdotes. It apparently was a pretty easy appraisal by the observation of our colleague. It didn't seem that there were a whole lot of questions. And the appraisal came back, I want to say, within the same week, at $750,000. Which was
and
obviously...
your jaw dropped again, I have to imagine.
And it was just one of those moments where, you're kind of like, okay, this is real. You know about the history, but to feel like we're very much part of that historical process of Black folk being devalued, of not being able to get a fair shake. And it also feels as though, frankly, we're at a moment where we need a new movement that is able to operate and be able to kind of distill this particular form of racism and really challenge it.
So despite this being your expertise, you still found this very hurtful.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because there's a dilemma, right? Like you live a contradiction. Like there are things that happen in this country where you're like, things have progressed significantly. And you never think that somehow you would be the victim of discrimination. Like, you're like, I play by the rules, I do all that I'm supposed to do.
The other thing that made it very challenging was 20 minutes after we had gotten the call about our home not reaching value, we had gotten a notification from one of Shani's doctors that she had a mass somewhere on her kidney or her adrenal gland. We didn't know. And so the process of trying to appeal the low valuation was actually simultaneous with us groping around for answers about her health.
Let me just say that I did this very resentfully. I kept thinking, what are we prioritizing?
Right,
you know,
right.
Are we putting responding to Loan Depot ahead of my, ahead of my health? And so but I was like, this is something we have to do.
Right.
I'm curious how you explained all this to your children, right? Because there are certain experiences that you all are familiar with from enduring or studying yourselves, but then when you're trying to discuss with a younger generation about this is America, how do you go about doing that?
Well, I think it's important to note that the conversation that we had with our children was new in terms of this housing situation,
right.
But we make racial literacy a constant in our house.
Right.
We name power, we name Blackness, we celebrate Blackness. And so I think we just talked about it in terms of us making decisions to get what we deserve.
Lastly, kind of a two-parter and unrelated questions, but Shani, I'd love to follow up on your health at this point and at the same time on your household, because what did you ultimately have happen with the appraisal?
Well, my health, God, it's been a long journey. I'm currently starting a trial at NIH on rare cancers because it seems as though the chemo that I was on worked for a bit, and then they put me on immunotherapy, and I just had a serious allergic reaction to it and had to take 3 months off. And now I am, hoping that this trial does something with the cancer, the adrenal gland cancer that I have, because I'm not ready to leave this world. There's so much work to be done, and I am definitely ready to continue to love on my children, dream on my children, and educate them to be a force.
Relative to the house, one, it was important to, in some ways, get more photos of the family and kind of, reassert our place here. It was also, I think, important that we did, in fact, at least get a refinance that allowed us to bring our mortgage payment down. The market conditions did change. The interest rates went up, so it was not the same rate that we initially were supposed to be approved for. We had to change the terms of the loan by virtue of that from a 15-year mortgage to a 30-year mortgage. And so now we'll be, expected to pay an additional 15 years of payments on the property. And that means there are a whole host of things that we won't be able to do in terms of investments in, kids' college funds, being able to have equity, accumulate more quickly, just freeing up our income, in general. All of that has been lost through the actions of, a very small number of people.
Well, we thank you so much for sharing your experience. That was mouth-dropping to you and eye-opening, perhaps, for many others. Dr. Shani Mott and Nathan Connolly, we really appreciate your insight tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.